All right, so welcome to the Why Enter the Minnesota Build a Better Mousetrap Competition webinar brought to you by the Minnesota Local Technical Assistance Program. Just a quick overview of today's agenda. We'll go through some brief introductions on everybody on the call here today, followed by an overview of the Mousetrap competition and how you can enter. And then we have some of our previous winners with us here today who will be presenting their project and how they came to apply for and enter the competition. And then there's some time for questions at the end. And if you have any questions or comments as we go along, you are very free to enter them into the chat or the Q&A section or to raise your hand and we can unmute you as we go along here. So quickly, some introductions. I'm Natalie Niskanen. I am a program coordinator with the Minnesota LTAP in the Center for Transportation Studies. And I am joined here today by Dan Pliska. Dan, you want to say hello?
Yeah, hi everybody. I'm Dan Pliska. I'm the street maintenance manager with the city of Rochester.
Thanks, Dan. And I'm also joined by Lonnie Murray from Oakland Township.
Hello, I'm Lonnie Murray from Oakland Township.
Thanks, Lonnie. All right, so before we get started, just a quick overview of the Minnesota LTAP. LTAP is a program designed to provide local transportation agencies with tools to improve their operations. And our ultimate goal is to foster a safe, efficient, environmentally sound transportation system by improving skills and knowledge of the local transportation providers through training, events, demonstrations, technical assistance, and technology transfer. All of that to say, local agencies, we are here for you. We want to provide you with the tools that you need to do your jobs better and improve what you're doing. So reach out to us if you have any needs or questions. And just another tidbit about the LTAP, we were established, the Minnesota LTAP was established in 1992 by the Federal Highway Administration and in partnership with the local Road Research Board. And we are one of 58 LTAP centers nationwide. Just a quick overview of the training and education that we provide. We have multiple training opportunities throughout the year at convenient locations around the state. And then there are also several online courses to choose from that you can attend anywhere you have a computer or access to Wi-Fi. And online courses are an easy way to get the training you need when you need it. And when you have the time, such as now, when hopefully there's not too much snow where you're at, and no road construction probably happening. So take a look at what we have online, and we also have a calendar of upcoming training opportunities as well. So without further ado, the Minnesota Build a Better Mousetrap competition occurs annually. So it's an annual competition, but you can enter at any time. You do not have to wait for us, the Minnesota LTAP, to announce that we're accepting entries. You can enter whenever you can. We have a couple categories for awards available. The Minnesota Pioneer Award is a locally relevant product or tool that is among the first to solve a maintenance problem with a homegrown solution. And then the Minnesota Smart Transformation Award is a locally relevant significant change in any transportation activity or process that is smart. So specific, measurable, achievable, realistic, and time-bound. That's a lot to remember. It's all on our website. But ultimately, it resolves in improved efficiencies. And then as far as eligibility, all local Minnesota transportation agencies are eligible to enter. So getting down to brass tacks, what do you get if you win the local Minnesota Build a Better Mousetrap competition? So winners receive an article in the Printed Exchange Quarterly newsletter, as well as features on the Minnesota LTAP website and e-newsletter. We also give you an entry into the National Federal Highway Administration competition, where winners receive more bragging rights and promotion and exposure on the FHWA website. We also give a framed certificate. And then finally, we also offer a prize worth up to $450. As far as entering, we have 4 entry categories. We take submissions in areas of maintenance, so tools, equipment, fabrication, and methods, so things like reachers, modifications, and assembly. We also look for transportation facility improvements, so storage access, operations, services, and things like that. There's a category for inspection and data collection, so automated or remote means, testing or time-related things. And then finally, asset management techniques, so GIS, mapping, decision support systems, and things like that. And then as far as judging criteria, how are your entries, how are the winners selected? They are judged on cost savings, benefits to the community and or the agency, ingenuity, and transferability to others and effectiveness. So then how to enter. The Minnesota LTAP administers this program. So you'll visit the Minnesota Mousetrap page on the LTAP website. If you look here on this bar, we have like a research and innovation tab, and you just click on it, and that's how you find the Mousetrap page. And then you will click on the button to submit your entry. That will take you to an entry form where you'll be asked for some contact information and to describe how you went about your project. And we encourage folks to provide photos if you have them available, as well as videos. We have some videos today, so that's pretty exciting. So we encourage you to submit as much information as you can. And then LTAP will reach out and confirm your submission, and we might ask you some more questions. And then winners are usually notified in early June, if I recall correctly. So again, there's that website, and that's where you will click to submit your entry. So let's say you have an idea and you want to execute it, but you don't have the funding available. Well, there is a program available for you where you can apply for funds and apply it to your project. So you can check out the Local Operational Research Assistance Program, or we call it OPRA for short, a little more memorable. And OPRA funds projects up to $20,000 through a request for proposal process. But I think the key to remember there is you could get up to $20,000. And the purpose of OPRA is to fund and share innovations in operations, construction, and maintenance relating to methods, materials, and equipment. And OPRA wants to encourage a safe, efficient, and environmentally sound transportation network. So once again, local transportation agencies are the ones who would be applying for these funds. So in order to apply, you can visit the OPRA webpage. Once again, you're just going to that same drop down on our Minnesota LTAP website, and OPRA is right there under Build a Better Mousetrap. And then you'll click on the Apply for Funding button, and that'll give you all the information you need to apply. So with all of that, and without further ado, I will hand it over to first Dan Plizga, who is 2022's winner. Dan, you can take it away.
Sounds good. Yeah. And we, in reviewing the process there, we went through that same thing. So we had this idea and we applied for the OPRA grant and got that, and then submitted for the Mousetrap. So it's kind of a great pair of programs together. Yeah, so our Mousetrap winner was some brine enhancements. So really, when we first began pre-treating salt on our trucks, we would run 6 to 8 gallons per ton, which is not a whole bunch of brine, but these days we're really trying to use more brine because it's efficient. So in doing so and using higher rates of brine, our operators were struggling with getting feedback errors on our spreader controller. Basically, once the tanks got below half full, and then this required the operators to monkey around and try to reset this error, and possibly eventually give up and just say, I'm not going to use brine the rest of my route. So, which is not beneficial. So, you want to go to the next slide now? So you can see here what our typical truck tank looks like. So there's one of these on each side of the truck. They hold 100 gallons each. So in using more brine, once the tank would get below about half full due to sloshing, or let's say you lift your box up to get material to the back, air would get sucked into the system. And that's kind of what created our error. It's also pretty hilly in Rochester. So even just driving up a steep hill, you would end up sucking air, and then the controller thinks it's out of material and won't run the pump. And the solutions we came up with for that, if you want to go to the next slide. So we identified a couple possible solutions. One is we could kind of change where the tanks are located. And, as you can see, it's not ideal having the suction on the front of the tank, but with how they're placed, it'd be difficult to change that. We talked about possibly adding ballast to the tanks to reduce the sloshing, but the opening isn't very big, so it'd be hard to get like ballast balls in there. So the solution we came up with was to add this nurse tank. So it's mounted lower than both of the saddle tanks on the sides. And what basically happens is the main truck tanks gravity drain into this lower tank, and then the pump suction draws from the bottom of this tank. So you basically never are subject to air in the system because this tank always stays full until the side tanks are completely empty. And if you go to the next slide, you can see kind of looking up at the bottom of the tank, what that would look like. So, and another benefit is it gave us an additional 30 gallons of brine. So we're up to 230 gallons per truck. So kind of an added side benefit. And then next slide goes over the cost. So, a pretty inexpensive solution to the problem. We have the labor on there, but it was just our shop foreman that ended up doing it. So not really any hard costs to the project for that. So overall cost is relatively low. And we basically implemented this on all of our new trucks. Now we actually our vendor actually adds this as a standard, installation during building the trucks now. So it's worked out great. Yeah, and so answering the question of, why enter the mousetrap? It's always cool to see all the ideas that everybody has. We're all kind of trying to solve the same problems. And so even if it's, something super simple that you've created in your shop, or maybe you think you just cobbled something together, it's things that other agencies are likely trying to solve. So, I'd encourage anybody to enter the competition, and it's always really fun to see all the entries and ideas that people have came up with. And, especially with that opera funding, even if it's just an idea that you want to try, you could apply to get funding for it and then build it and then, enter the mousetrap. So it's a great program.
Fantastic, Dan. Thank you so much for sharing. Does anybody, let's see, I don't see any questions here for now. So I will move along here. So next I will turn it over to Lonnie. Go ahead, Lonnie.
Okay, here we go. So this was kind of a project that or an idea came up with. How many times have you been spreading sand, on the road and looked in the mirror and seen it all just kind of slide to the edge on the shiny ice and realize that it's not doing very little or hardly anything, or the sun comes out and as soon as it hits that sand, it sinks below the glaze on the road and is really ineffective, and with the traffic we're getting on our gravel roads now, they pretty much demand that, something be done so that they can maintain their speed, that nobody wants to slow down anymore. And so then, for years you kind of look in the mirror wondering what you can do, and through other things that I've done, I kind of came up with, we've got to roughen up the surface, so the salt sand will stay where we put it, and maybe even cut back on a little bit on even what we're using. So the clerk and I put together a little bit of a presentation maybe to try to explain what I came up with. And so this is what we kind of came up with and what we called it. And so this is our belly scratcher presentation, I guess. So I guess we'll start.
Go to slide one.
Go to slide one. The first.
Go to two.
Go to
Okay.
two to the first video. So after making this thing, I use this just continually. This is actually in the summer before before it's even froze. I grade roads with this continually, save a lot of hours on our grader, just keeping the roads when they are chlorided roads where you don't want to use the grader, destroy the chloride, take out small imperfections, a lot by stop signs where the acceleration points are, where you get small washboards and potholes, and saves a lot of hours running a grader around to do just little spots here and there, or where the four-wheeler where the throttle accidentally got stuck. Everybody sees that. It works great. You don't have to run a grader out. Now slide 2. And now the norm now, it seems this year, the last few years, is rain in December. And the gravel roads this year were just froze, and it rained and fog, and this brought, the ice was thin, and this brought the gravel back to the top and destroyed the ice, and it gave everybody traction without using any sand or salt or anything on any of our gravel roads. And for 15 miles, I ran this on both sides and didn't use any salt or sand on any of the roads. One thing to note, though, is that you don't want to do this on tar. But the salt sand worked great on the tar. So slide 4. Whoops, let's see.
The
Oops.
back of the house.
I got it ahead of myself. So the two I use used milling machine teeth. The two on the left had been on the bar for a year. The carbide is extremely tough, and the two on the right are used ones that we were putting in. So I get these virtually for free from a local tar company. So our expense is really just putting them in. So now we're on to 4. So these are the so-called new ones that we're putting in as it's on the bench. So we're on to 5. These were, I found out that we had to add these angle iron bars on each side to hang onto the washer. Without those, when you're just using the belly blade will shake violent enough to throw them out. So we had to add kind of a lock, which ended up being a real cheap fix, and never lost a one after that. Number 6, this is a shim that goes underneath the hinge to adjust the depth of the penetration that I have below the belly blade, because the belly blade is the guide for the depth that the teeth will ride. In the winter, I run the teeth only about 3/8 of an inch for penetrating the ice, but in the summer, I run the teeth about a 1/2 inch for grading. So number 7. Here's just another picture of the shim going underneath the hinge for controlling the depth. Number 8 shows a picture of what the teeth would look like from the belly blade side. Number 9 shows a back side picture of the teeth with the bar down. And it's actually the teeth this is on concrete in front of the town hall, and it's holding the belly blade up with the teeth pushed down. So number 10. This is a short video, and I used brake chambers as the actuator to raise and lower the bar, so that so then it's up out of the way, so it never touches the ground when you're just using the belly blade. And then the last video is just back on the grading on the road. So it's amazing how many hours I put on that thing now. It's like your favorite screwdriver in your toolbox. You can't live without it. It's the amount of hours I put on that is unbelievable. When you're out on the road, just when you're graveling the road or doing other work, and there's a spot where it's a little bit tore up by somebody's driveway or whatever, and you erase it and keep right on working. It's amazing how much we use that thing. It's turned out to be the wonder. So that's kind of the short of what I dreamed up as you're driving around in the truck. So,
Thank you so much for sharing, Lonnie. As we move into the Q&A, I have a question for you. How did you hear about the Mousetrap program and how did you decide to enter?
well, I mean, I've seen it in the pamphlets that get mailed out, and we kind of just entered it on a whim, like, well, let's just send a picture in, and it's, I don't know, it's been kind of a ride since then, you know, but didn't expect all this publicity, but I guess it's been kind of fun.
Well, we're glad it's worked out well for you and that it's still something that you're using all the time.
Mhm.
It's great to share this with others and to see how you've done this and put it together. So thanks
Yeah.
for sharing everything.
Yeah.
What would you say to other agencies who are maybe considering entering or aren't sure if they should enter?
Well, I think, like was said previously, that seeing the ideas that are floating around, it kind of gets the gears turning and you kind of start thinking about how, well, maybe we can do something like that or adapt it to what you're doing or use it. And, this is, you know, like this bar that I made has cut down on how much salt sand we use by a tremendous amount. I mean, and going into the future with a lot of the building that's going on around here and the traffic that's starting to pick up on our roads, we're kind of a pass-through township where we get a lot of traffic on our gravel roads, and it's people they want to go fast on our gravel roads too, and so it's really helped out and it's saving us a lot. And the environmental part of it with salt, it's this has done a lot, so it's something to think about,
Well, fantastic, Lonnie. We have a question in the chat for you from Mike. Have other townships or counties contacted you about the belly scratcher?
No, I did hear from a friend of mine that they thought somebody else had tried building one or whatever. I would encourage anybody that wants to build one to contact us. Why reinvent the wheel? Because I mean, I played with this for several years, when you build something like this, the first one's on paper, then you build one out of cardboard, and then you build one out of wood, and then you build a prototype. And it took 3 years to build one, and there's a lot to kind of think about, and, so, I would encourage, a phone call, so, and come up and try it out. So
Yeah, and that's
it,
fantastic. If anybody ever wants to reach out to anyone, we can always get folks in touch with winners and ask them questions if they want to ask questions about their projects. And I think you raise a really good point, Lonnie, about the projects that people can submit don't have to be projects you did in just a couple months or days. It can be, you can submit things that you've worked on for years and help folks out by taking out that extra work of all the prototyping and all the tests and everything else that you've done. So yeah, that's something we're really hoping to share with others that's part of the program, sharing all of the innovations with other agencies who might have that same problem.
yeah.
See any other questions or comments? Just checking out the chat here. All right, everyone. Well, thank you so much for joining us here today. Thanks, Dan and Lonnie, once again for joining and sharing your project and your perspective on the Build a Better Mousetrap program. We appreciate everyone's time. And again, if you have any thoughts or questions, you can reach out to us. We have an email address, MnLTAP@umn.edu, and just have our websites here for your review. Once again, thanks so much.